DawgNation, and welcome into DawgNation at Large here at SEC Media Days. I'm Kaylee Mansell with four-time WNBA All-Star Connor Riley.
Not quite.
We've talked about before how there are just certain days that are so good for the internet, and unexpectedly today has been one of those days. Woke up this morning to see the Shane Gillis monologue from the ESPYs, and now we have a CEO who had an affair with head of HR at a Coldplay concert, and I cannot get enough of the content.
I just, with the Coldplay thing, I'm curious what song was being played, because it's clearly one of their sappier, more emotional love songs. It's not one of the upbeat ones, but just the sheer horror there. Very much enjoy that. And look, it's been a great week on the internet. Tons of content here from SEC Media Days, and unfortunately some content between Georgia and Texas recruiting as well.
There's been a lot of great memes so far that have stemmed from this CEO situation, but I just saw one before we started filming and I had to hold on to it over this moment, and it said that Coldplay should try to continue to do this each week where they find a couple that looks a little bit iffy and call it "You Just Got Coldplayed." That's a segment I can get behind.
That's tough.
All right, so glad we could come off the top with some breaking news from this morning, and with that, we will go ahead and get started here on DawgNation at Large.
It's the show for the new breed of Georgia Bulldog fan. This is DawgNation at Large with DawgNation insiders Connor Riley and Kaylee Mansell.
And now we get to add one of our favorite people to the group, Cody Chaffins, who is going to join us today for something I'm really excited for. One of the perks of being here at SEC Media Days is that we get to submit an SEC ballot for a variety of different things, but on today's show, we're just going to focus on our projected order of finish in the SEC as well as our projected SEC champion. Just because you put somebody at number one in the order of finish doesn't mean you think that they can pull out an SEC championship. Then we're going back to our normal DawgBites segment where we get to cover a variety of topics. This week we'll take a look at Georgia's latest commit as well as somebody who could be added to the group as of tomorrow. We'll follow it up with our favorite memes of the week, and unfortunately all this stuff happened so late today that they are going to be football related as far as I'm concerned. And then last week Cody and I did SEC Media Days bingo trying to predict some of the things that would be said here, and we're going to have an accountability check to see how many of those things we got right. But for now, we'll start with this. So we got to submit the media ballot, and the most important thing, and you'll see on social media later when they announce the entire Media Days one, the projected order of finish for the teams. There being 16 teams, we'll go in groups of 4. We're going to let Connor kick us off. We're going to start at the bottom, so we'll go 16, 15, 14, 13.
Yeah, for me, this was actually, I think, the easiest part of the exercise. I do think there's a clear bottom 4 when it comes to this. Number 16, I put Mississippi State. I know it's year 2 for Jeff Levy, and you can make a case that maybe Kentucky belongs above them.
We're going to have to argue about this.
But but I think 15 and 16 are easy. Arkansas at 14, I think, speaks to the depth of talent in this league, and Vanderbilt at 13, too. That's a team a year ago we saw beat Alabama, give Texas a game. The fact that those are your 13th and 14th best teams, they have real talent there. I just don't know over the course of the season if they're going to have the depth that stands out every week for them to be able to withstand that and get to a point where they're winning 6 or 7 games and getting to a bowl game.
Well, if Cody thinks that we need to argue about where Kentucky and Mississippi State fall, I would love to go ahead and hear that argument, because we'll let Cody go ahead and go next with these, because the bottom ones are essentially all going to be the same, just maybe in a different order.
Right. The thing that got me today was Mark Stoops stood up there, and the first question was Coach, are you motivated for this year? What a question to ask a coach who just went on 15 minutes about how he's excited about his team, and they go, Coach, you motivated for this year? I was
Are any of us motivated?
Yeah, really.
And then he goes, he didn't say stuff, but he says stuff's hard. And I'm like, yeah, it is hard in the SEC. But yeah, it could be rough for Kentucky.
Yeah.
Mark Stoops was probably somebody that really benefited too from going on the last day when there's a lot of people gone. Imagine him going day one, after Brian Kelly, the types of questions that would be asked in that way. Cody, give us your bottom 4.
All right, so looking at my bottom 4, and again, if you're Georgia, you're not real concerned. I put Kentucky last, Mississippi State right there. 2 Georgia opponents, by the way. And then Vanderbilt and Arkansas also right there. But I think what's crazy, like you said, Taylon Green's running around here. He's a pretty big quarterback, and he's got NFL potential, right? His second year under Bobby Petrino. Could this be a year they pick somebody off? It's just really, really tough schedule for Arkansas in the SEC. You got Tennessee, Texas A&M, Auburn right there, and then they got to go to Baton Rouge, got to go to Austin, Texas at the end of the year. So going to be tough for Arkansas. And then Vanderbilt, another quarterback who held court here at SEC Media Days this week, Diego Pavia, but they kind of snuck up on a lot of folks last year. Now Alabama has the Vanderbilt game circled on their schedule, so I think it could be tough for Vandy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because if we take a look at my bottom four, I actually had them in the same order as Cody, but all of us had the same bottom four in general. When it comes to Kentucky, they were last in the SEC last year for scoring offense. The only SEC game I could see them winning on their schedule this year is Vanderbilt, and even that is a toss-up because I've got Vanderbilt ahead of them. I don't care what Mark Stoops said down there. You can tell that he's been over it for a while. I think that continued to show today. I think that Mississippi State has a little bit more passion than with Levy than with Stoops. And here's the thing is, like, I don't see Mississippi State winning a bunch of games. But similar to how I view Arkansas, I think that they can be a disruptor for one game that they're not supposed to win. Because Mississippi State played a lot of close games last year. Like, it wasn't just Georgia. In the moment, it felt like it was just Georgia. But you go back and look at last year's schedule, and they gave some teams some tough time. So they might only win one game, but it might be a big game that they're not supposed to win at all. And I would throw Arkansas in there as well.
And honestly, like, one game might be enough for Mississippi State or Kentucky, vice versa, to finish above. Somebody has to finish in last in this league.
I saw somebody circle for Mississippi State. They got Arizona State comes to Starkville this year. Somebody had that one circled as like potential, I guess, upset.
And they played them close last year.
Well, also, too, for close games, like Mississippi State could play just good enough to pull out a win over Arkansas or Missouri. And then I think y'all absolutely hit the nail on the head when it came to Vanderbilt. Even though you bring back Diego Pavia, I think they have a super underrated running back in Cedric Alexander. You can't sneak up on anybody this year. And teams are taking them more seriously now, so I think that they are at a disadvantage just because of the leap that they took last year. Like, those teams aren't going to let that happen again. So those are my bottom four. Now we'll start getting into the middle, which, I mean, I feel like maybe the 9 through 12 wasn't as difficult for me. It's when we start getting to that 5 through 8 that it becomes really tough. So we'll go ahead and do our 9 through 12s. Connor, what do you have?
I've got a pretty, I think, spicy 9 through 12.
Ooh, okay.
I've got I've got Auburn at number 12, Oklahoma at number 11, Florida at number 10, and Missouri at number 9. Florida and Oklahoma, I think, are better than the 10th and 11th best teams in the SEC, but they both have very difficult schedules. And I just think it's going to be hard for them to navigate that. I think those teams are going to be improved on the field this year, but record-wise, you might not necessarily see that. I think this is a Missouri program that, as we heard Eli Drinkwitz say today, maybe flies a little bit under the radar from where they are from a national perspective. They also get a very easy and manageable schedule. So even though I think Florida and Oklahoma are better teams than Missouri, I think the schedule benefits Missouri, and that's why I had them there. And then Auburn at 12. We're going to know what to think of this Auburn team in the first 6 weeks. They have a very difficult stretch to open the season. And if they're able to navigate that and go like 4-2 of those first couple games where they play Baylor, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Georgia, I think they might end up being okay and getting to 8 wins on the season. But if they struggle through there and you maybe start to see this team turn on Hugh Freeze a little bit, which I think is there because I don't believe that Auburn in the first 2 years of Hugh Freeze has done a good job of building a winning culture. And I think that showed up in some of the games they lost last year. And if that persists this year, it's going to be a really, really long year for Auburn.
I think something interesting to look at is, especially with this group in particular, the numbers. Somebody in this group is going to be a lot better than we think as of this moment. Out of your 4 picks here, who do you think could be the one that surprises us?
Florida. I think that they, what they did to end last season, I think is replicable in that, like, yes, they were able to beat Ole Miss and they were able to beat LSU, and those games were at home. But I think the way that they won is something that I think can translate forward to them. My biggest question with Florida is just the schedule, and more specifically, can DJ Lagway stay healthy and navigate that? Because if he's able to, there is a world where I think Florida could finish in the top 4 with their schedule. But because of it being what it is, I have them right now, I think, at number 10.
So as of right now, it looks like everything is pretty similar for us. This is where things could go different. Cody, how different
I think
is yours?
It is different because Florida is one of those teams, and Auburn around here, that are starting to get some love. So as you take a look at with the teams that I've put in that kind of mix, those teams aren't there for me. Missouri's down there, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and then Tennessee, I think, falls out. And the reason I think that, I think Auburn's got the weapons. I think Jackson Arnold could come in there, and if he can be the guy in a Hugh Freeze offense, we could see that thing start to turn around. They've amassed some players over there, so it's a time to see if they can actually play. And I do think the Florida schedule is the thing that's going to hurt them the most. But you know what? You got Texas coming to the Swamp, and in Lagway, if he can be the Lagway that we saw at moments last year, and if this team can finish the way they finished last year, then Florida could be up there closer to the top.
So one thing that was not on there, and I imagine that you're going to have to defend it here in a moment, I didn't see Auburn on that list, so I'm excited to circle back around and see why you have them so high.
Yeah, like I said, you got Cam Coleman, you got some offensive weapons right there. I think Auburn could get in there and mix it up a little bit.
All right, so mine is a little bit mixed up here. I do agree with Cody that if I had to pick a number 12 team, it'd be Missouri. Now, you could make the argument that Missouri could be one of those teams that ends up being a little bit better because they bring back 17 starters, but you lose your two most important players in Brady Cook and Luther Burden. I feel like they have a pretty favorable home schedule overall, but I made the mistake last year of thinking that Missouri was going to go to the college football playoff, and it was absolutely disappointing. So I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket yet. For me, Auburn and Missouri are interchangeable here as well. I'm not entirely sold on Auburn yet because sometimes you'll see a really nice purse walking by and it'll be a really shiny Gucci bag, and then you start looking a little bit closer and you're like, wait a second, that's fake. Like, I think that could be Auburn. They brought in Jackson Arnold. Yeah, I mean, that's
they've only had 4 losing seasons in a row, Kaylee. Why are you doubting Auburn?
I mean, you bring in Jackson Arnold and everybody's like, oh my gosh, Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman, but I need to see it to believe it. You know what I mean?
Fair.
All right, and then let me go Tennessee. They're going to take a major step back with a new quarterback. You also lose one of the top running backs in the SEC with Dylan Sampson last year, and a lot of key players on defense. Now, luckily for them, they play some of the worst teams in the SEC, like Kentucky and Mississippi State, but now suddenly every game becomes a toss-up for Tennessee just because of the players that they lost. I actually like Oklahoma to kind of jump up a little bit now that they've had time to prepare themselves for what an SEC schedule looks like. I'm really excited to see what they have in John Mateer. And
he had the swag at SEC.
Oh, for sure he had the swag. I didn't know what he looked like until yesterday, and I was like, okay, that totally makes sense now. But I think one part of their offense that was weak last year was their run game, and they go get their running back from Cal, so they address that issue. I think that they are going to take a step up because Brent Venables knows that he absolutely has to this year. So I like Oklahoma in that 9 spot right there.
Yep.
All right, now we're getting into what I consider to be the most difficult stretch. I think 1 through 4 was pretty easy across the board. Yeah. It's when you get to 5 through 8 where it's all those 3-loss teams.
Yep.
The 3-loss gauntlet teams, that's where things are going to get a little bit mixed up. So, Connor, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, number 8 for me, I've got Texas A&M. Number 7, I've got South Carolina. I've got Tennessee at number 6, a good bit higher than both of you guys, and I have Ole Miss at number 5. We'll start with Tennessee because we did touch on them in a little bit there.
Yeah.
The teams we all agreed were 13, 14, 15, 16. Tennessee plays all 4 of them. So I think that, yes, they have to play Georgia, and yes, they have to play Alabama. But I think there's a war where they lose those 2 games, Georgia and Alabama, and they win the rest of their SEC games. So even though, I think Florida could be a very easily better team than Tennessee, I think that Tennessee's schedule allows them to finish a good bit higher here. And for as much as made as the quarterback and Nico, it's not like Nico was great a season ago. They won in large part because of their defense and their running game. I think that's going to translate into this year. As South Carolina, I think they could absolutely crack that top 4 with Lenora Sellers. They got to replace a lot on their defensive line, which was a big reason for the success a year ago. And that schedule was tough. You get Alabama, you get LSU, you get Ole Miss.
Yeah.
It is very tricky there. A&M is an interesting team to me. Year 2 under Mike Elko. They got some nice wins a season ago. It is not the hardest schedule in the SEC, but it's not exactly an easy one either. And then Ole Miss at number 5, quietly, they get an easier schedule compared to the rest of the SEC. Now, they do have to go to Athens this year. But I think there's a real proof of concept in what Lane Kiffin has built. And even though they lose a bit from what made last year's team, I think, so talented, and ultimately they don't get into the college football playoff. But I think we know that Lane Kiffin is capable now at this point in time of putting together an 8, 9, maybe if everything breaks right, a 10-win team at Ole Miss. And if that's the case, Ole Miss is going to be in the college football playoff if they go 10-2.
It's hard to tell because, people always love the backup quarterback, but there's a lot of people in Oxford that feel like Austin Simmons is going to be better than Jackson Dart,
Very popular.
who had a really, really good year last year. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting for Ole Miss.
All right, Cody, let's see how interesting this group
It's
is for
tough
you.
for me. This whole thing is tough for me
Yes.
because every coach I heard from this week is really excited about their ball club. And they've all been working really, really hard. So it could be anybody, right? As we take a look at the ones that I've put on here for kind of that middle of the pack. There's Florida. There's Auburn at 7, which you guys asked me about. South Carolina and Ole Miss. Again, I feel like Auburn's they kind of been snake bit the last few years. Now, looking at the schedule, they go to Norman, go to Texas A&M. They'll bring in Georgia. But you got Missouri, Arkansas, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. You can reel off some wins right there now. And then you finish with Alabama. So Georgia and Alabama are the big ones, and then those road trips early in the season. So if they can get through one of those, and then you're talking about right here a 3 or 4 loss SEC team to be hanging out in this group. So it feels like you could do that.
But vice versa from what we were talking about with the group before, like somebody in that group is going to be better than what we project, and somebody out of this group is going to be worse than what we see. And I mean, honestly,
it could be South Carolina.
I think South Carolina, for me,
it's a boom or bust.
Yeah, Cody and I have them in that same tier. I think South Carolina is easily a team where I recognize the talent that they have, and that's why I put them in this tier. But I think there's an easy world where they take a step back and finish in that 9-12 range.
Yeah, so for my group here, I'm going to kick it off at number 8 with Florida. And I've said this before, like the schedule is still tough. I think that they take a step forward. But it's not so much a year 2 DJ Lagway that scares me. It's a year 3 DJ Lagway. So, I mean, next year when we're talking about Florida, they could easily be one of those top 4 teams. But I think that DJ Lagway is going to be a lot better with another year of experience with him. So I've got them at 8. This is where Texas A&M, Ole Miss, South Carolina right here were the most difficult for me. I think you could easily switch South Carolina and Ole Miss, but I like Ole Miss at home because that's where their matchup is. So I really think it comes down to the head-to-head. South Carolina goes to Ole Miss, so I think that they end up getting that win. The talent isn't as good as last year, but I do believe that anything could be possible with Lenora Sellers for South Carolina. When it comes to Ole Miss, this is when I really started to have to break down like head-to-head matchups. Ole Miss, I'm going to go Georgia loss, an LSU loss, and a one game that they're not supposed to lose, like when they go on the road to Florida last
every year, right?
Exactly. Yep. So I'm expecting that for them. This is where things might get a little bit controversial. I have Texas A&M at 5. They have almost a pretty similar schedule to what Georgia's got, where they've got 3 really big home games this year. They host South Carolina, they host Auburn, and they host Florida, which could all naturally be a toss-up game. But if we give them the benefit of the doubt, let's say they win 2 of those 3 games and then they lose to LSU and Texas on the road, that still puts them at 5-3. But we saw how things were last year with Texas A&M, where they ended up in a very similar spot. I feel very confident about what Marcel Reed brings to the table for them. I like Mike Elko a lot. That game, though, against Notre Dame will tell us a lot more about what this team holds. But just based on the schedule, the games that they have at home, I'm going Texas A&M at my 5.
And I think you mentioned that Notre Dame game. I actually think, other than the Texas game because of the rivalry implications and all that comes from that, that Notre Dame game is going to tell us the most about this Texas A&M team. But it's interesting in comparing all of our lists. We had the same 4 bottom teams, slightly different order. We also had all 4 of the same teams at the very top now, seeing you guys 5 through 12.
Yes.
So very interesting to sort of see how stratified it is.
The other thing you talk about, these non-conference games, like we're putting these teams in order of where we think they're going to finish in the Southeastern Conference. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean anything for the playoffs because there's so many of these big-time games. Texas got to start with Ohio State. So adding one more loss in there, where does that put them? And then some of these other type games, LSU, Clemson, where does that where they end up? They could be high in the SEC but low in the rankings.
Because that's what shook things up last year is when we got to the Texas A&M game. We were like, we don't know who Georgia's going to play in the SEC championship, and it doesn't feel like it should be A&M because they lost at the very beginning of the season, but now here they are on the heels of making it to the SEC championship. So it's just a reminder that, it only matters what happens inside the conference. So as Connor mentioned, everybody has the same top 4. It's just a matter of the order that we have them in. So, Connor, take us away.
I have LSU at number 4. I have Texas at number 3. I have Alabama at number 2. And for the regular season, I have Georgia coming in at number 1. I think this team is going to be motivated. I think this is a Georgia team that understands that compared to expectations, maybe underperformed a season ago, even with the schedule. Yes, they go 10-2, but they didn't look always like the Georgia team of past. I'm higher on Alabama than I think some people might be. I know Texas, when the final poll comes out on Friday, Texas is going to be picked to win the SEC this year. I think in large part that is due to the last name of their projected starting quarterback, Arch Manning. And with LSU, they got a tricky schedule that they have to navigate, but I'm a big fan of Garrett Nussmeier, and if he is the best quarterback in the SEC, like I think he can be, I could very easily see a world where LSU and Texas are playing in the SEC championship game and not Georgia, Alabama.
So my question here is, if you've got Texas at number 3, then more than likely they've lost
twice. That was
games.
my question.
Games.
Is
So,
it the Florida or Texas
is it
A&M?
Texas A&M?
Or
Is it
somewhere-
Oklahoma?
Okay,
Oh.
Red River. Okay.
Red River, weird stuff happens there. I do think that Georgia beats Texas, and I think that's the biggest reason I have Georgia at 1 and Texas at where they're at.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, Texas is higher because you just look at the
Yeah.
schedule, right?
Yeah.
Like, what a great other than going to Georgia, it's not that bad. So I think Texas could probably skate with one loss. Georgia we're going to end up with one loss, I would assume. Nobody's going to go undefeated in the league. Alabama, LSU, essentially it's the winner of Alabama, LSU. That's going to be
Yes.
at number 3 for me. And so I'll say Alabama gets the win just because it's in Tuscaloosa this year. So that's my top 3. Texas, I mean, it's not – there's no, like, hot takes here.
We're splitting
It
hairs.
really is. And Texas. And, again, this doesn't mean that personally I think Georgia could lose to Texas in the SEC championship game. We'll get to that in just a minute.
So here's the thing. Even though we all had the same Final Four, none of our orders were the same. Mine's very similar to Cody in the sense that I think that Texas A&M finishes first just because the strength of schedule in the SEC. I'm giving them the benefit of one loss somewhere in there. I've got Georgia at number 2. I'm going to say that they have at least one loss in a major home game between Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss. And I'm also giving them room for one more because I'll tell you what scares me a little bit with Georgia's schedule, and I think you and I have discussed this before. There's a lot of rivalries that Georgia has been on top of for the last couple of years.
Auburn.
Tennessee, Florida, Auburn. Like, one of those games scares me a lot more than one of the games at home because somebody's bound to get one at some point. So I've got Georgia at my number 2. Here's the thing about LSU and Alabama. I agree with Cody that it's going to come down to the head-to-head matchup. This is an absolute toss-up game. I think you could switch them either way. We usually give credit to Alabama just because you always give Alabama the benefit of the doubt. I'm honestly looking at which team has the better quarterback, and right now on paper and based on experience, that's Garrett Nussmeier. But I also started looking into the numbers, and this could mean absolutely nothing, right? Alabama at LSU has a better record than Alabama versus LSU at home. They've won more games on the road at LSU than they have hosting. I don't know if that means anything. That's just something to keep in mind.
Look at you.
I know, right? I don't know if Ty Simpson has that same – I mean, I know Jalen Milroe was always up and down, but you can't deny that he did have the clutch
He was
factor.
great against LSU
That's
a
what I'm
season
saying,
ago.
the clutch factor in certain situations, and I don't know if Ty Simpson has that. Plus, LSU brings in the top-ranked portal class, so give me LSU here, but I'm not that confident about it.
Just looking at your guys' rankings, just little old Georgia, just looking to play second fiddle to Texas. And,
This is second year in a row.
we saw this a year ago. Kaylee said last year Georgia was going to go into Austin. Hope to keep it close, hope to play competitive, but they're ultimately going to lose that game.
No.
So little old Georgia.
This feels
in Texas.
very, very hypocritical because I have now gone to the Connor Riley school of if you can't be upset. If I picked Texas to win and they win, then I was right. And if Georgia wins, then woohoo, everybody's happy.
There you go.
So I'm actually just learning from you.
Just big bad Texas. They're taking Tyler Atkinson. They're about to have
Justice
Georgia's
Terry.
number. Yeah.
All right, well, here's the thing. Just because I picked Texas to finish first in the order of the SEC doesn't mean I have them winning the SEC champion. We also have to separately pick the SEC champion. So, Connor, is it little old Georgia?
No, I'm actually picking Alabama. I have made this mistake before, and I'm not making it anymore. Until I see Georgia with some regularity beat Alabama on the field, I, in good conscience, cannot pick Georgia to beat Alabama. Alabama has absolutely owned Georgia in Atlanta. There is no other way to put it. And until I see Georgia go out there and do it, I'm just going to be skeptical. So while I have Georgia and Alabama playing the SEC championship game, and I have Georgia as the 1 seed, I have Alabama winning that game. That game, everyone this week is talking about Georgia and Texas because of the recruiting stuff and everything that comes from that. That game on September 27th for Georgia is Georgia's most important game in the regular season to me. It is not close. They absolutely need to win that game because if you lose again to Kaylee Mansell and you lose again to Alabama, this becomes, I think, a much, much bigger story where, last year, yes, it was at Alabama. If Alabama comes into Sanford Stadium, beats Georgia at home,
they're the streak stoppers,
ends Georgia's streak, that is Georgia's going to have to reckon with that in some way. And they're going to have to really think about what do they do against Alabama because at that point there'll be a clear problem for them. So I think that game against Alabama has been widely overlooked this week because of all the drama surrounding Georgia and Texas, but it absolutely shouldn't.
He really did all that just to take Alabama in the SEC championship. He had it planned out, right?
That's fair.
Cody,
fine.
Do you also think that Alabama's going to be Georgia in the SEC championship?
I don't think Alabama will be in the SEC championship game. I think it'll be Georgia and Texas, and I think here's the thing. I think maybe the second time around Georgia gets the best of Texas. I think Texas could be the streak stopper this year coming into Athens. And so maybe it's the second time that we see Ryan Wingo and Dalen Everett match up that Everett gets the better of him. So I'll say Georgia beats Texas at the bins down the street from us.
To your point, though, if Texas is the one that ends the home winning streak, I still think as a Georgia fan, you're pretty happy with the season that's unfolded at that point.
Because
that means
Georgia, that's almost not a bad thing sometimes. You got to lose one.
Right, because that's a home win over Alabama. It's a home win over Ole Miss. That still leaves you in pretty good shape if that's the first home loss of the season.
I'm pretty sure if you gave Georgia fans the option, do you get the home win over Alabama or Texas? You can't have both. 9 out of 10 Georgia fans are going to take the home win over Alabama easily, if not 100%, right?
Hope so. BA, who's standing outside watching us, made this point. The longer you can put off that first loss, I think changes the way your season is viewed.
Yeah.
Last year, Georgia losing into September, I think changed the way that season unfolded for Georgia. So the longer you can put off that first loss, I think the better it is.
And Texas will be a number 1 team. It's you lost to number 1. That happens.
So I'm with Cody. I put Georgia as my projected SEC champion, and I think it goes back to we've got neighbors here on Radio Row, and I heard them talking this morning, and this is after I put in my vote, but I think they put it in a really good way that now that Nick Saban is not at Alabama, you have the always give Kirby Smart the benefit of the doubt factor, and seeing what happened in the SEC championship last year, even with quarterback 1 going down, still being able to maintain that win with somebody who had very little experience. Kirby Smart is somebody who knows the ins and outs of the SEC championship and still believes the importance of it, which a lot of guys on this list I don't think view that anymore. So I'm always going to give Kirby Smart the benefit of the doubt when it comes to playing in the SEC championship game. Plus, too, I remember last year thinking there was going to be a lot more Texas fans because I thought that would be a big deal. And no, it was a Georgia home game through and through. So as long as you've got Georgia playing in the SEC championship, it's always going to be Georgia fan dominated, and I do think that it made a difference last year.
And I feel like it's like the signs around here. It just means more probably to Georgia to win the conference championship.
All right. So those are our projected order of finish and our projected SEC champion. We'll get to DawgBites in just a second, but as one last thing, we also had to vote for individual position groups and players.
Yeah, 3 punters they wanted.
Yeah, 3 long snappers.
Come on, man.
Did anybody put a Georgia player as first in a ranking for a position?
I don't believe that I did.
I think the only route that I went was Peyton Woodring for all the specialists.
I did put Peyton Woodring.
And Thorson's been,
yeah. So if you want to use
and Bo
that,
Gardner.
Take
that, other long snappers who I've never heard of in my entire life.
Next thing we know, Kirby Smart's going to be playing this on a loop in the locker room as a negative thing. This is what they're saying about you guys, and these are your people, So, okay. We'll say thank you to Cody for joining us. We'll see him again when Meme Machine comes back around. And in just a second, we'll actually give our final thoughts on SEC Media Days in our DawgBite segment. But first, we want to remind you that here on DawgNation at Large, we are always thankful to partner with Zagoria Law Firm. And what makes them so unique is that they are the only law firm in the state that specializes in representing people bitten by dogs as well as those who've been knocked down by dogs. And they can represent you from anywhere in the state, whether you're in North Georgia, South Georgia, East Georgia, West Georgia, they can come to you. So if you or a loved one has been hurt by someone else's dog, give them a call at 833-GA-DawgBite. That's DOGBITE, or visit ZagoriaLaw.com. With that, let's do DawgBites. So the beautiful thing about this point in the season is now we actually have things to talk about for DawgBites because there's been so much that's happened that we can actually talk about 5 different topics. It's the best thing in the world. So we'll talk about Georgia's newest commit, Nick Abrams, the 4-star linebacker out of Maryland. The Dogs actually held off a very late push from Oregon to grab Nick Abrams. And here's the thing. I know a lot of people are upset about the Tyler Atkinson situation. Don't forget about the one less star that Nick Abrams has, because if there's one person we know among the Georgia assistant coaches who can develop a linebacker, it's Glenn Schumann. So congratulations to the newest dog, and don't worry about that extra star. Glenn Schumann knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and so much of the Atkinson discussion, I think, stems from the fact that he was a 5-star prospect, but the inside linebacker position, while it has been a great one at the University of Georgia, is just not a premium position. And so if you're able to get by, and I would hardly call Nick Abrams getting by at this position. And also, you see his ranking. I think he's like 296 in the 247 Sports composite rankings. Look at his Final Four: Georgia, Oregon, Alabama, Michigan. Those are the big boys. Those are 3 of the last 4 national champions. I think that says quite a bit about the company that was after Abrams and how Abrams is viewed as a prospect and as a player.
So one of the big storylines this week, and we've talked about it so much, is the stuff that's been going on behind the scenes with Georgia and Texas, and that included the flip of the 4-star defensive lineman James Johnson. But Kirby Smart always has a contingency plan, and of course that information goes out, and the next thing you know, 4-star defensive lineman Valdon Stone, who is the Before the Hedges top target as of right now, announces that he's committing tomorrow. And here's the thing, he's one of the fastest rising 4-stars in the entire country, not even just at the defensive line position. This was somebody who also reclassified. So I think it just goes to show you that when one door closes, another one opens.
Yeah, Stone has about as high of a ceiling as any prospect that is linked to Georgia at this point in time, comes from Sweden, so he is still young in his football career. But I think you've seen pretty clearly he comes to Georgia in June, works out in front of coaches, and from that moment, there has been a 120-mile-an-hour push to try and land Son. I think that speaks to how they view him and the potential that he brings to the table. Obviously, there's no sugarcoating. Losing a prospect like James Johnson stings, but when you're able to potentially sign 6 or 7 defensive linemen like Georgia projects to in this recruiting cycle, that makes up a little bit for losing someone of Johnson's caliber.
So we're getting close to football season when we finally get an injury update. And I remember during the spring when Kirby had his opening press conference, and it felt like every single player on the team was injured and nobody was participating in G-Day. Well, it looks like a lot of the key players are back to full health, including Monroe Freeland, Christian Miller, as well as Dalen Everett. So we still don't know about Brett Thorson at this point in time, right? But right now, so far, so good.
Thorson is the biggest question mark, which if you're a Georgia fan, great. I'm sure you're hoping for the world where Georgia doesn't punt in the first 2 games. We don't find out at all about their situation. If I had to guess, I think Georgia is hoping to have Thorson ready to go by the Tennessee game there. That means they can have Drew Miller get some more experience in those games against Marshall and Austin Peay. It was an ACL MCL injury for Thorson in his plant leg, so not his kicking leg, but with landing and the way that he goes about that, just as important and crucial there. Those are the big injuries. We did also get confirmation that Jaden Riddell, the tight end, Quintavious Johnson, the outside linebacker, both had tightrope surgery after the spring game. I do wonder, with those injuries happening where they were, does that maybe further hurt the idea that we're going to have G-Day in the future? Because Kirby, I do think, seemed pretty annoyed or upset by the fact that those injuries happened in spring game.
Yeah, especially, too, for someone like Quintavious Johnson, who's one of those year 2 players that Kirby was talking about that are going to basically have to step into a way bigger role.
Yep.
But it is good to know that there are going to be a lot of guys who are ready for game 1 against Marshall, because it was not looking great in the spring.
Yep.
So something that came up earlier this week, it was one of the first breaking news of the day on Tuesday, and it's Muschamp's role with the team, because at first we heard that he wasn't going to be coaching at all, and then we heard that he was going to have some role with the team, and I'm calling it Muschamp madness because I actually feel more confused than ever when it comes to what does Will Muschamp do with the Dogs now?
Yeah, I think with Muschamp, so he doesn't have an official title. That's why he was not included in the media guide. But can he, come around and answer things for Kirby Smart? Will he pick up the phone if he calls him? Sure, absolutely. Would it be a surprise to see him stop in at a few practices over the course of the year? No, not at all. I think that, again, they want to be respectful of Will as he tries to spend more time with his family. Obviously, his son Whit, a quarterback at Vanderbilt, it matters a great deal to him, and being able to be there for those games. I think that they're trying to find the balance and the right role for him in terms of how connected is he still to the University of Georgia while being able to do all the things that he wants to do away from the football field. And it could very easily be something along the lines of he takes on a bigger role as the season progresses, like we saw a year ago where he was on the sidelines for that game against Texas in the SEC championship game and then in the Notre Dame game as well.
So we are here at SEC Media Days. It is the final day. I think they're just waiting on Mike Elko to go up there. He'll be the last one. Maybe he'll come up behind us. Let's go ahead and put a bow on it, though. Do you have any final thoughts from Media Days?
I wonder how much longer SEC Media Days are going to be a thing. It just feels like this year in particular there was significantly less juice. I can tell you I don't believe the Georgia coaches and players love coming through here. They don't love the dog and pony show that this is associated with. And I just wonder in this day and age of college football and the way that they engage with fans and the way that fans consume this, I'm curious going forward, what does SEC Media Days continue to look like, especially where we saw at SEC spring meetings at the end of May. I think that take up, as BA pointed out, a lot of the airspace around this, and it just didn't feel like there was a ton of new information or new things out there to be discussed.
I feel like sometimes in the past, SEC Media Days is a reflection of what the season ends up being like in terms of just the overall atmosphere and the vibe. I feel the exact opposite about what I gathered this week. It definitely felt like there was something off out there. Maybe it was a little sleepy, quiet. Yes, the Georgia-Texas stuff was going on behind the scenes, and we knew about that, but it wasn't like it was the news that was buzzing through the room. I don't think that that's a reflection of what the season's going to be at all.
Yep.
I think it's going to be absolute chaos. A lot of people are going to be speaking up, speaking for their teams, and I don't see the sleepiness that we got in here being the way that this season's going to go down. So we have tons of content from SEC Media Days on DawgNation. I mean, tons. And so the best way that you can find it is by going to our DawgNation YouTube page. Interviews with Peter Burns, Cole Kublik, the one with Benjamin Watson will air tomorrow on DawgNation Daily. So to see all of our content from SEC Media Days, make sure to check out our DawgNation YouTube page. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe so you can always get notified anytime that DawgNation goes live. With that, we'll go ahead and bring Cody Chaffins back on, and we will do Meme Machine.
Who's that coming down the track? Who's that coming down the track? It's a Meme Machine around the block. It's a Meme Machine around the block. No, no!
We try to keep our memes sports related. This would have been one of those days where I was okay with it not being sports related, but I mean, it's SEC Media Days week, so I feel like everything kind of ties back into that, right?
Right, we got a lot
Yes.
of great content this week.
We did. I actually didn't use one for this week. I wanted to do something about Arch and his frat boy outfit that he wore, but I just feel like it was overdone.
Everybody was talking about it.
Yeah, and I have firsthand seen what that looks like when frat boys come to the office to beg for their lives.
What was the one that said that he was going to go plead his case to
Yeah.
stay on campus?
And I mean, they could not have hit on that better. So I'm not going to use Arch. This is one I've been sitting on for a couple weeks just because I have the world's #1 Gator hater in front of me. And like, there's always people that joke about like, what's the difference between a crocodile and an owl? Well, the difference is that one hasn't won an SEC championship in 17 years. So I've been sitting on that for a while. I'm sure that Cody has something better for us.
Oh, I love that one. I was at the St. Augustine Alligator Farm on my vacation this year, and there were so many gator jokes that I was happy to make.
They write themselves.
The other thing that's really interesting, because I spent some time in Northeast Florida when I was down there, and I was down there kind of like in their heyday. And you're down there now. I saw so much more Georgia stuff than I saw, because it's always been kind of a mix in that area, Jacksonville, St. Augustine area. A lot of dog people, loud and proud in Jacksonville. So I loved seeing that. Mine will come from SEC Media Days. And it was some folks just having some fun with Gunnar Stockton. It said, Gunnar Stockton, this one says it's gone viral. Who knows? It's one fan says he looks like he had already maxed out his 401k for the year. So, A, he looks responsible. How about the man's in a suit? Yeah. And the other thing, they want to say he looks old. Who's the last guy that from Georgia who used to get issues like that?
Brock Bowers.
Brock Bowers. Just go play like Brock Bowers and nobody cares. So that was the one thing. They hate on our quarterback all you want, but
they've got helmets on anyway. Like the hair,
Yeah.
it matters far less, I think, than it's supposed to. And so, like, look, make fun of Gunner's hairline all you want. If he throws a good deep ball, I think Georgia fans are going to be just fine with that.
And the whole it being viral, like that was the first tweet I saw of that, and I thought that Gunner had escaped media days, just like being quiet, not putting too much out there, and then of course they're gonna find a reason to get on. And so I really hope that Gunner does stay off of social media like he says he does.
Yep.
Connor, bring us home.
Now, this is not specifically SEC Media Days related. However, Nick Saban's name did find a way to come up this week with obviously Greg McElroy hinting that he could come back, Kirby Smart putting that down. But I've got this one. It's, I asked ChatGPT this. I asked Grok that. Well, I asked Nick Saban, and he said he wasn't going to do it. So quit asking. Obviously a reference to his famous back and forth with Maria Taylor. Nick Saban not here at Media Days this year. He was here last year in a media role. Obviously, his time here at LSU, Alabama. Maybe it's as simple as, SEC Media Days felt stale this year because Nick Saban was not here to sort of stir up the pot.
First time in a long time.
Yeah.
That's funny that was your meme because, maybe 3 minutes before the show started, I sent one to Cody and it said, I asked ChatGPT, I asked Grok, and it said, I asked Kirby Smart, and he said, how about them effing dogs? All right, so Connor, last week you were on vacation.
Yep.
We hope that you had the best time,
I
and we
did.
sincerely mean that. But we had an idea that with the SEC Media Days coming up, it's just classic Kirby Smart speech time. So we were going to try to predict some of the things that he would say or do, and now because of that, it's time to have an accountability check.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
I'll say this every single time. That is my favorite open on any bit that we have.
And I always look like this to make sure I spelled accountability right.
All right, so Connor was not with us last week, so I got to give a big shout out to Cody Chaffins for putting this together to see which ones we got right and which ones we got wrong from our bingo card last week. So here it is. Give me Kirby Smart ask a reporter to either repeat themselves or say that he doesn't understand the question.
So you want me to pump up Jordan Hare? Is that what you want me to do?
I'll go with an easy one. Then Gunner Stockton will be asked about his truck.
From last
How many
season.
questions you get asked about the pickup truck? I guess that's kind of a signature.
It was Mike of all people. He helped
Kirby
me out.
speaks on the 15th, which happens to be him and Mary Beth's anniversary. So I have in his
look at you.
opening statement, he's going to mention
that's
that it's
great
him and Mary Beth's
knowledge.
anniversary.
Next and first and foremost would be my wife. Absolutely the best teammate anybody could ever ask
Research.
for. And
Yep.
Best
19
teammate.
years.
I love it.
We've
So
been together,
cute.
and this is the 19th anniversary, and here I am celebrating it in Atlanta with you guys.
Kirby Smart will mention, hey man, Marshall, so this- it they're goes the down here defending now. Sun Belt champions. This is not a warm-up game. We are not looking ahead.
A lot of people from Tuscaloosa coming over to the game. Athens, the city of.
And then he
loves
talks
it.
about Alabama. He's talking about
Great
games,
environment.
into September.
We're going direct
wrong.
quote here.
Okay,
How you do anything is how you do everything.
3 words:
No.
fire, passion, energy.
Fire, passion, and
A little
energy.
bit broad.
Fire, passion, and
This is
energy.
easy.
There's fire, passion, and energy.
That's the
Play
free
with fire,
space.
passion, and energy.
Fire, passion, energy.
These are all different
Yeah,
clips.
we talk about
Yep.
that a lot. It's guys that have fire, passion, and energy.
Playing with fire, passion, and energy.
I've seen what it looks like to have fire, passion, and energy. A love for the game and fire, passion, and energy.
Something about
Cody
keeping
won
the
just
main
off of that
thing,
one
the
alone.
main thing.
Okay.
Like, I imagine to be a playoff question or something of that sort, and we're not concerned.
No playoff
We're not
question.
Nobody shied away from
CJ
it.
Allen definitely, though, at
There
one
will be
point
a
said,
question
keep the main
asked
thing
of
the main
Kirby
thing.
I'll
No
take
video,
that.
though.
I
About a
went Kirby
player
Smart,
who
though.
is not on the 2 deep. He's not even going to play this year, but he's from a specific town that this media member is from. And they'll say, can you tell us about so-and-so, so-and-so?
Coach Joey Lamar from WSAV in Savannah. What have you seen from Thomas Blackshear?
And Kirby Walt Smart will basically have to find something nice to say about
Wow,
the guy. Thomas
Blackshear.
Blackshear.
I thought we'd
kind of
get-
say he's not going to play this year.
Thomas, we hadn't got to see much. You mentioned he came after the school year.
Now, you could have also
but
done Elijah
we've had
Griffin
some
with
good
this as
reports
well,
of
though.
him
He is
in-
going to
in
play.
Summer workouts and
We'll get
things.
to that. I'll tell you about
He's
it
a
in just
tremendous
a
high
second.
school player, and he's a kid that's going to learn and grow in our program.
Awesome.
A very long, unnecessary thanking of Greg Sankey.
Thank you, Greg, for that warm welcome. And he was sure to get that preemptive
golf
strike
story
about my
was
golf
just
game
so
out
over the
early,
top.
Yeah.
which he
It
went
just
on
kept
to make
going.
5
just
stars
kept going.
himself.
Man.
Kept going.
And I told him, you're not
You
allowed
got a
to make
hole
5
by hole
pars and
breakdown like
he
it's
beat
the
pro
British
a couple
Open.
holes. So
Good. He'll call out like another Georgia sport. So like Georgia had a tennis player who just won SEC Female Athlete of the Year, and he'll like give her a shout out.
Leland in our sports information department has a young lady that just won a national championship with our track team. Kayla is with us today. Kayla Jackson from Detroit, Michigan, came all the way to Athens, Georgia to run track. She won a national championship with our women's track program.
So I gave myself an X on that one because, I did not get that one correct. Now, you mentioned Elijah Griffin.
Yeah.
I will tell you, we threw a bunch out there.
Yeah.
There's a couple that we didn't hit on. I thought that Kirby would be asked specifically about Elijah Griffin, and he would immediately turn it into, well, that whole position group needs to play well. All of our defensive depth. No, he actually spent some time talking specifically about Elijah Griffin. Now, I don't know what that means. Does that mean good things about Elijah, like that he's not afraid to talk about him? Or is it just a new chapter? I don't know. But that I thought was interesting because he usually never talks about his freshmen specifically.
I have to think that if it was one of the more traditional Georgia media members that was asking him specifically about Elijah Griffin, 100% would have gotten all our defensive linemen got to play well this year.
And keep in mind, if you couldn't hear it all because we were kind of commentating over it, this will be posted on our DawgNation YouTube page as well, so you can go watch the full thing. I think looking back on it all, if I could do one thing differently, I would have been saying, well, it's hard to play anywhere on the road in the SEC. That was the big one that was missed. I mean, it didn't even take him 5 minutes to hit on that. So I think that if I could go back and do it all again, that's the one. Is there any ones that we're not thinking of that you would have taken?
We hit maybe a little bit more on Gunner, and specifically like mentioning Gunner and Ryan together, because a lot of the times Kirby of late has been asked specifically about Gunner. He's been very quick to lump Ryan Puglisi in there to make sure that it still appears as a competition, even though I think most of us still expect Gunner to be the starting quarterback on August 30th.
One of the other ones we didn't put in there that we discussed kind of our bonus ones last week, would there be a Carson Beck question? And then, sure enough, Kirby Smart's first stop, they say, compare Carson Beck to Gunner Stockton. Kirby was not about that.
No.
He said, I don't do comparisons.
Again, another person that was definitely not a part of the Georgia media because everybody too scared. I'll straight up say
Scared? No.
Scared.
No. But just know what you're going to get.
Yeah, you know the answer.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't want to be made to look like a fool because I know that that's not the kind of question that he's going to answer, And
it's one of those things we talked to Mike Griffith on the beat about this on our show, things we hate about media days, sitting in there with Kirby Smart, and I want to ask a legit Georgia football question. Well, we got everybody talking about, can you tell us about Julian Humphrey, who transferred to our team? Yep. Can you tell us about what it's going to be like to play on the road at Jordan Hare? Can you talk about all these? Everybody wants something, and
we're all doing our own job.
Everybody's trying to fill their own shows, right? But man, it's frustrating.
Yes, you can. I think as Cody illustrates that point, you can understand why I maybe don't have the same level of enthusiasm that say Kaylee Mansell does for this event.
Oh, yeah, no, I love this. I get to put on my cute outfits and bebop around and go talk some Georgia football with other people. So I enjoy something like this, but I could also understand why some people aren't the biggest fans of it. I do want to say this, though, because I think this was also brought to light with the All-Star game. I think Atlanta has done a really good job hosting this event, just like the logistics and everything that go into it. I know a lot of people said the same thing about the All-Star game. So shout out to the city of Atlanta for being a great host city this week to a ton of major events.
Yeah, it's interesting they have not announced where it's going to be next year.
No.
Which to Connor's point, will it be next year is another thing. The only thing I would think they do like about it is all of us here talking about the SEC, but you know what? We're all going to be somewhere talking about the SEC no matter what. So do they just turn it into a car wash and they fly them all to ESPN and let those guys have that experience? That's what they call it when they do every show on ESPN in one day. So they do they just do that and fill the TV time? Because that's all ESPN with SEC Network is looking to fill.
Where you get to pick. Greg Sankey comes to you and says, you're getting to place this event next year wherever you want. Where are we putting it?
Oh, maybe Charlotte, where the headquarters is, like not in Nashville or Birmingham.
No SEC in North Carolina.
I know, but the SEC Network headquarters are there. I still feel like it's a pretty central location. I mean, Nashville's obviously the ideal one every time.
I threw out Orlando. It's close enough to Florida. Like if you're going to do Dallas, then you can do Orlando. And it would be a fun thing, but Orlando in the summer, we would never make it there on time, trying to get down I-4, so maybe that's a bad idea.
I like the Orlando suggestion as well.
I think that
They could do it at like
Connor was
ESPN
gonna
Wide
go
World
against
Sports and
anything
just
you said.
do the whole thing there.
Okay, actually, I see that vision now.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we got to wrap it up.
Okay.
I mean, that's what happens when you get to this point in SEC
Oh.
Media Days, you know. But
Everybody's tearing their stuff down. It's all,
that's what
it's
I'm
all-
saying. We're one of the last ones left. I'm afraid they might kick us out. So, DawgNation, thank you so much for joining us all week long here at SEC Media Days. Connor, Cody, thank you for joining me. And hey, we will be right back here next Thursday for another episode of DawgNation at Large.